Hello and welcome to the walkthrough of the small level that I have designed and created using Unreal 4. So as you can see, this level is made up of multiple reflection captures and physics and post-processing volumes, plus the foliage tool which has been used to place down a variety of trees, bushes and collectibles, along with the landscape tool to create a sloping terrain and then to paint on textures. I'll start off with water. The water is a simple physics plane with a physics volume and a post-processing volume underneath. Physics volume makes it so that when you go into it, you go into a swimming mode, meaning you are buoyant but can swim down if needed. We've also added a sprint system in, so you don't have to walk around as slowly. The post-processing volume makes it very blue underwater, as if to replicate the look of water. As you can see, there is a day-night cycle. You can see in the top left that the time is ticking along using a 24-hour clock. It also catalogues how many days you've been in the game. The game includes a small health system, which if you this is only a sort of test. If you spend too much time in water, it will then start ticking down as if you were getting too cold. You can then pick up these herbs and use the inventory system to heal yourself using the herbs. I have a basic inventory system which allows you to collect items in your backpack, some of which are stackable, some of which aren't. For example, the herbs which are used for healing stack, while these logs which can be used to create a campfire don't. If you walk up to the campfire spot here and press E to interact with it using an interact interface, it will then place a log. You can do this up to 4 times, each time increasing the size of the fire. After a few seconds, it will burn through each log in series and get dimmer as it goes. And I'll go into each major part of the level's blueprints. First I'll start with the day-night cycle. This is simply done by taking how long into the game it has been, delta seconds, and timesing it by the day length. The lower number, the longer the day. Multiply this is then used to change the rotation of the light source or sun, along with updating the sun direction in the sky sphere. This is then run for a few sets of variable things, which then go into these two functions here. The time is simply made up of 2 sections, one part which calculates the time by taking the delta and then doing a few bits of maths, which then spits out the time in seconds, which can then be used and split into days, hours and minutes. These are then used to display the amount of days in the game and the actual clock, which are then used in a HUD. I'll now go over how the fire works. This, when interacted with the interact interface, checks how many logs are on the fire. If there are 4 logs on the fire, then you don't want any more placed on, so it will stop that from happening immediately. After that, it will then, if there are less than 4 logs, then it will query if the user has logs in their inventory. It will then set the fire and set the flame particle system and the light to be visible, and then it will remove the item from the inventory using the inventory component. This then carries on into this, which takes the quantity of the logs and uses this switch on in to set each log level to be visible from the component and set the intensity of the light in the fire. This then adds 1 onto the log quantity. This down here does simply the opposite. It will reduce the amount of logs on fire every 5 seconds down there, and yeah, reduce the light thing until fire is off. The inventory component is where the majority of the code makes up for the inventory system. These are all different functions that are inside of it. Add to inventory, create stack, the event graph, which simply creates it sends this, I'll start with add to inventory. This simply takes the item that needs to be added. It then determines whether or not it is stackable. If it is stackable, it checks if the inventory already has a partial stack in it, in which case it will add it to that stack, or if it needs to create a new stack, which it will do down here. Prepare inventory. This takes the size of the inventory and creates adequate spaces for it and loads any items that are needed into it. Remove from inventory. This does basically the opposite of add to inventory. It figures out where the slot with the item you want removed is, and then it will remove said one or more of said item from that slot. This is the inventory query. This works by looping through the entire inventory, searching for an item that matches the class and item that you're looking for. It then calculates how many that adds up, how many of that is in the inventory, and then can return if it is or isn't in the inventory. Add to stack. This works by figuring out if there's a stack that can hold all of the item that you're adding, or if there's more than one stack's worth. If there's more than filling a stack, then this runs here, where it will fill up the rest of the stack that it can, and then run add to inventory, which repeats the cycle till all items are added. And this down here just adds the items to a existing stack, as you won't need to loop again. Has partial stack. This is a macro which runs, which loops around detecting whether there is a partial stack already in the inventory. This makes up the inventory component, which is used to interface with all items that have inventories. This here is the player and all of their code. Some of this is from the original player, like jump and mouse input, and the hardware. Sprinting is one I've added myself. This is very simple. It just sets max speed when sprinting is one I've added myself. This just sets a max speed for running and swimming when it's pressed, and when it's released undoes that. Up here, this here checks if the player is swimming. If so, then it splits off here and adds different movement input, allowing you to go up and down, not just side to side. This over here is what damages the player when they are swimming for too long. It detects if the player is overlapping with something, for example the physics volume in the water. It then waits 1 second to add a slight delay. This means that even if you take your time going into the water, it will still activate. As I found that if you just jump straight in, it would sometimes not launch this loop here. If you're swimming, then it will start this small loop here, which detects if the health is above 0. If so, then it removes 1 every 2 seconds, and it does this until, yeah, you reach 0 health. This here is the interface interact. This will, when pressed for E, which is the interact key on this game, it will run a loop which will look through all items that are overlaying nearby and see if they have an interact interface. If they do, then it will interact with them. If not, then it won't. This here is what opens the inventory when you press tab. This here is a query thing. This was mainly for debugging. Down here is what launches the HUDs, and that's what kills the player. That concludes the walkthrough of the game and the blueprints and scripting behind it. I hope you enjoyed watching. Goodbye.